What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another high ELO tier list. My name is Kangas, and today I'll be going over the changes for patch 10.25 and also provide some tier lists for high ELO specifically. Before we do that though, let's do our question of the day. What do you think is the highest tier flex pick on this patch? Right now, every time I see a Victor locked in, I can't tell if it's going mid lane or bot lane, which makes choosing a support for myself very difficult. Let us know yours below. Now, let's get into the video. We do have a full comprehensive video covering all the changes on our channel that you can check out if you need a rundown of the whole patch. For this video, we'll jump straight into champion balance changes and run you guys through their placements. This patch's most anticipated change was a nerf to Kayle. Pantheon did get big changes too, don't get me wrong, but I know a lot of players were sitting there twiddling their thumbs and hoping that Kayle would get nerfed. And let me tell you, she did. Her base magic resist has been lowered from 34 to 30, and her E-passive on-hit AP ratio was reduced from 25 to 20. Especially in high ELO where things are more cutthroat and players have a stronger understanding of counter picks, this should make countering Kayle much more plausible. Although AP top laners might not be in the best place right now, players can take advantage of risks when they're playing against Kayle specifically. Of course, the nerf to her E is going to hit her scaling as well. Thus, Kayle will be considered an S tier pick for this patch. By the way, don't forget, we've also started a Wild Rift channel, so you can check out the description link if you're interested in playing the mobile game. Next up, Pantheon top received a big buff this patch. First, he now actually gains 5 stacks of his passive whenever he recalls. This one feels great. His base movement speed also was reduced from 355 to 345, but his Q's cooldown was reduced by 2 seconds at all ranks, while the mana cost was also reduced from 40 to 30. Releasing the skill early also refunds 60% instead of 50% of the cooldown, but it no longer slows when empowered. His W's base damage was also increased from 60 to 140 to 60 to 220, which was huge. The big change is his E will no longer block turret shots, but the retreat movement penalty was lowered from 50% to 25%, and empowering his E grants him 60% move speed for 1.5 seconds when he slams his shield at the cost of the extended duration. Finally, the spear that drops from his ultimate will slow for 50% and also apply an unempowered spear's worth of damage around it. He also gains 10, 20, and 30 armor penetration based on his ultimate's rank. These changes should heavily discourage players from playing him as a support and push him into solo lanes once again, theoretically. His W received a huge buff with 80 more damage, meaning that solo lane experience will be much more valuable on him now. With this change, we've gone ahead and decided that Pantheon will be an A tier pick for now. Irelia received a buff this patch as she's been underperforming, even in high ELO. Her base AD was increased from 63 to 65, while her Q cooldown was reduced from 12 to 8 seconds to 11 to 7. The cooldown buff is helpful because the replacement of cooldown reduction from ability haste has definitely done some damage to her mobility. It's a rather small one, so Irelia will still remain in the B tier for now. Mordekaiser has also been buffed because he just felt a bit weak. His Q's isolation bonus was increased from 20 to 40% to 30 to 50%, which should help out his dueling strength and also make his ultimate a little more terrifying. Even with these changes, Mordekaiser will still sit in B tier for now. Nasus has been struggling, especially in high ELO as of late. The cooldown on his Q was lowered by half a second at all ranks this patch. As he'll need more time to scale up, however, we still think he's pretty weak in high ELO and we'll just leave him in the C tier for now. Our OP picks for the top lane are Malphite, Shen, and Camille, followed by Kayle, Darius, Maokai, Ornn, Fiora, Jax, and Aatrox in the S tier. Malphite, Shen, and Camille are extremely powerful laners who have a ton of impact on games through the high impact of their abilities. Malphite's powerful crowd control and engage, Shen's map-wise presence, and Camille's versatile do-it-all kit all merit them as the strongest top laners in high ELO right now. Next, let's talk about the jungle. Kayn is first on the list for jungle changes. His base armor was reduced from 38 to 35, while his Q base damage went from 75 to 155 down to 65 to 145. Finally, his Q's cooldown was also increased from 6 to 4 seconds to 7 to 5 seconds. These are pretty big nerfs and well needed because Kayn is a really big deal right now. His stats were ridiculous last patch, and he had a 52% ban rate in Platinum and higher, and even had a 54% win rate, one of the highest of the junglers. There's very little to say, and I think all of us knew that Kayn was beyond broken, so these nerfs are welcome, but we'll still consider him an S tier pick this time around. Of course, Amumu also needed another nerf as well. His mana growth has been reverted from 60 to 40, while his E and R have been nerfed. His E's damage has been reduced from 75 to 175 to 75 to 155, while his ultimate's duration has been lowered from 2 seconds flat to 1.5 to 1.75 to 2 seconds based on ability level. Players in high elo have actually been dealing with him just fine, and will have him placed in the A tier, because while he holds powerful presence during the draft phase, he tends to lose a lot more games than he wins these days. This is probably because when high elo players are confident enough to let him through, they're also well prepared enough to take him on. Next up, in contrast to the nerfs, Warwick actually got a buff. His passive damage went up from 8 to 42 to 12 to 44, and will now include bonus ratios, 15% of his bonus AD and 10% of his AP. He'll stay in the B tier for now, but we'll have to keep our eyes on him, as these changes could open up new builds that could be OP. Wukong jungle has been underperforming, so his E now deals 150% damage to monsters. This will help out the players who pick him as a jungler, because he's been underperforming severely when compared to his top lane counterpart. Wukong will be a B tier pick for this patch. Next up is a buff for Rengar jungle. His W extra healing for monster damage went up from 50% to 100%, and his W will also deal 65 to 130 bonus damage to monsters, scaling with his champion level. With some massive buffs, we're okay placing Rengar in the B tier. Let's just hope he doesn't get any better. Echo Jungle is also getting some love, as his passive damage to monsters is receiving a massive buff from 150% to 250%. Another jungle change for yet another jungler who's fallen off heavily this preseason. Echo will be moved into the B tier with this massive buff to his passive. Nidalee was also buffed up this patch. Her spear's minimum damage has gone up from 70 to 130 plus 50% to 70 to 150 plus 70% AP, while the max damage had its base damage increased from 210 to 390 to 210 to 450 as a result. The mana cost on her Q was also reduced from 50 to 90 to 50 to 70, while her E's mana cost went from 60 to 120 to 50 to 90. We expect high elo players to especially take note of these changes and pop off with her this patch. For now, we'll place her in the B tier because of how poorly she's been performing, but we could definitely see this going up. Lee Sin has felt pretty weak this preseason, and he's gotten some changes this patch to help him out. His base armor was increased from 33 to 36, his W cooldown reduced from 14 to 12 seconds, and his E's damage increased from 80 to 240 up to 100 to 260. Again, he's another pick that we expect high elo players to pop off with, but for now, we'll leave him in the B tier because of his excessively low win rate. Gragas also got a buff this patch. His passive healing went up from 6 to 8% of his maximum health, while his W's cooldown was decreased from 6 to 5 seconds. This should leave Gragas feeling much more durable than before, and might even encourage more tank Gragas builds. He'll stay in the C tier for now, but maybe things can change with more optimization or another buff in the future. Ivern actually received a buff this patch as well, alongside some nice reduced costs on his support items. His Q's cooldown was reduced from 14 to 10 down to 12 to 8 seconds, while his E's shield AP ratio increased from 80 to 90%. The E cooldown has also been reduced from 12 to 8 seconds down to 10 to 6 seconds, while Daisy's attack speed was increased from 0.623 to a nice even 0.7. These buffs are just so numerous enough to bring him back, and we'll place him in the B tier for this patch. Nerf after nerf beating him down, the time has finally come for Karthus to get a buff. This match, the Q's mana cost has been reduced from 20 to 44 to 20 to 40, and his Q's AP ratio increased from 30 to 35%. These buffs are pretty small, so we're going to leave Karthus in the C tier for now. Talia is also a champion who's finally gotten a buff that's been needed for quite some time. But no, it's not mid lane. Her Q now deals full damage to monsters at all times. This is a significant buff to her jungle clear, but with how she's been doing these past couple of patches, it's uncertain if this will be enough, so we'll leave her in the C tier for now. In our OP tier, we have Graves, Kha'Zix, and Nunu, followed up by Hecarim, Evelynn, Rammus, Kayn, Lilia, and Olaf in the S tier. But before we move on, there's a quick thing our analysts want to mention. Hecarim is S tier because while he is OP, the other OP picks are crazy outliers, and Hecarim is weaker than them comparatively. We want to differentiate this by placing him in the top of the S tier, but for those of you in the know, yes, he is still broken. I know guys, the jungle feels really rough right now. If you talk to one of our coaches though at ProGuides.com, I'm absolutely sure that they can help you sort out this mess and maybe even help you find some new picks that you might like. Next, let's go to the mid lane. He's been OP for long enough. Fizz finally got nerfed this patch, so he'll be in the S tier for now. Fizz's mana pool was buffed as Riot expected him to need some help, but turns out he ended up becoming too strong as a result. So this patch, his mana per level was reduced from 57 down to 37. Currently, he's just able to use his spells too frequently, and this nerf should keep him in check. Players will have to adapt by either building him differently, running new runes, or just playing more conservatively. Morgana Mid has randomly become too powerful, and she's going to take an L this patch as well. A pretty small one though. Her W DPS has gone down from 12 to 60 to 12 to 52. This nerf won't affect support Morgana as much, as W isn't an ability they pump many points into regardless. As a mid laner though, we'll place her in the A tier for now. Next up is Annie. Her E's movement speed buff was reduced from 30 to 60 to 20 to 50%. Being less mobile now, we expect her power and high elo to definitely take a hit. However, with a solid 54% win rate, we don't expect her to drop out of the S tier just yet. We'll be patient with this change because even though it's a big nerf, we think that Annie might be strong enough to pull through. We'll keep you guys updated in our mid-patch update next week, so make sure to subscribe to our channel if you want to receive a notification for that. Now up, the spicy change for the mid lane this patch is with Anivia, and it's honestly a big list of stuff. First up, her basic attack animation got a big quality of life buff and should function better, and its missile speed was increased from 1500 to 1600. Next, her Q now chills enemies it passes over. With that, the pass-through damage has been reduced from 60 to 160 plus 0.45 AP to 50 to 130 plus 0.25 AP, while the explosion damage now went up from 60 to 160 plus 0.45 AP to 70 to 210 plus 0.5 AP. Also, the full rank cooldown was reduced from 10 to 8 seconds to 11 to 7 seconds. The mana cost lowered from 80 to 120 to 80 to 100, and the missile speed increased from 800 to 950. The missile speed buff is one of the biggest changes here, and it should definitely help out Anivia players universally. Her W's length has also been changed from 400 to 800 to 500 to 800, while the cooldown has been changed from a flat 17 seconds to 20 to 16 seconds. Her E's mana cost was reduced from 50 to 90 to 40 flat, and the damage up from 50 to 150 plus 0.5 AP up to 60 to 180 plus 0.6 AP. Finally, her ultimate's cooldown was reduced from 6 seconds to 4, 2.5, and 1 second based on ability level, and the base damage then reduced from 40 to 80 down to 30 to 60. Overall, these are definitely buffs, and we expect Anivia to feel much stronger this patch. Anivia has been placed in the A tier this patch for high elo. Next up, Talon's W return damage is being increased from 45 to 125 to 45 to 145. Although seemingly small, this definitely helps out Talon's wave clear significantly. More wave clear means more agency over games, as he should be able to roam more effectively as a result. We're moving him up to the S tier because we just expect players to hold so much more agency in their games as a result of this change. If you're trying to have more agency over your games, make sure to check out our website, because we've got tons of content that can help you understand how to have more impact in your games. Also in the mid lane, Seraphine still has the same problem. No one wants to play her mid, and so once again, Riot is giving her some love. Her HP per level has gone up from 80 to 90, and her W will now self-shield for 50% more. With more survivability, Seraphine should have a much easier time in solo lanes, but we'll still leave her in the B tier for now. Yasuo and Yone received another buff this patch. Their attack speed per level was increased from 2.5 to 3.5%, so they should be stronger late game picks. With all the buffs to marksman items as well, these two should come out a bit stronger this patch. So if you were wondering why the buffs were so small, remember that these two are very volatile picks, and even small changes like slightly reduced costs on items can make a giant difference in their win rates. Our OP picks for mid lane are Akali and Echo this patch. Akali's ban rate has exceeded the 50% mark in Diamond 2 and higher, and it's not that much lower in Platinum Plus. While some players might argue she's not really that OP, there's an issue of player frustration, and at the very least, she feels OP in many different situations. In the S tier, we've got Fizz, Victor, Zed, Annie, Katarina, Galio, Malphite, Kayle, Zoe, and Talon. A quick note is that Zoe is a lot better in high elo, and I mean a lot. Her win rates overall are around 48%, but in Diamond 2 and higher, they shoot up to 53%. Call it a skill difference or whatever you want, but it seems like players in high elo know something that the rest of us don't. It's probably playstyle related, and also because they're typically better at landing their abilities. If you can't hit your abilities with Zoe, it's pretty doomed, because instead of one-shotting your opponents and terrorizing lobbies, you'll be whiffing over and over, causing your team more stress than your opponents. Another note is that Aurelion Sol has a very low play rate, but a very powerful win rate to back him up. He's a niche pick, but for those who are dedicated, it seems like he holds a ton of potential. Talia Mid also has so few games that we honestly can't place her accurately. She has even less than Aurelion Sol. She has 400 games in Diamond 2 Plus, so there's extremely little data to work with. So for now, we'll just leave her in the B tier. More power in the jungle might make her a stronger flex pick, and we might see her played more in the mid lane as a result next patch. That's a wrap for the mid lane. Let's run over the bot laners next. First up, we've cleaned up the list and removed some picks that aren't as popular right now, but we might add them back later if the odds shift in their favor. Like we've already mentioned in our initial rundown, Samira got nerfed. Riot is making sure that 200 years doesn't start over again, and that we don't have to run into another Aphelios problem. Samira's passive knockup can now only be used against knocked up enemies, rather than just anyone immobilized. However, she can still dash into attack range against immobilized enemies. It's lost a lot of functionality, but it's still there. Her Q and R's crit lifesteal has also been reduced from 100% to 66%, meaning her survivability has also taken a big hit this patch. We still think she'll be OP just because of her overall kit, but stay tuned as we might have to make some adjustments in our mid-patch update. Lethality Jhin was so good that it honestly started getting memed really hard. However, he's been nerfed a bit this patch, and lethality on ranged champions is significantly weaker this patch as well. His Q's bonus damage AD ratio has been reduced from 45 to 75% down to 35 to 65%. We're still hopeful for him though, and think players can still make him work with other builds. Thus, he'll stay an OP pick for now. Even given some time, Twitch is still underperforming. His win rates are very low and the buffs seem quite justified this patch. His Q's attack speed has gone up from 30 to 50 to 40 to 60%. His W slow has been increased from 25 to 45 to 30 to 50%, and his R bonus AD has gone up from 20 to 40 to 25 to 50. It's important to note both AD and AP Twitch benefit from these changes though. So we think overall he'll be in a better place since he just got 3 buffs in one patch. However, in high elo where players are better at punishing weaker early game picks, it's still quite difficult for a champion like Twitch to find a place in the meta. We'll place him in the C tier for now, but keep your eyes on him as the patch plays out. Our OP picks in the bottom lane are Samira, Jhin, and Kai'Sa. Followed in the S tier are Ashe, Draven, Ezreal, Misfortune, and Vayne. So, for supports, Lulu actually got buffed this patch. Her Q now deals 25% increased damage if a target is hit by both bolts, and the Q damage has been changed from 80 to 200 to 70 to 210. Because of this, her Q has had its damage fall off removed, but will deal 70% damage to minions. With this change, we're hoping that top or mid Lulu doesn't pop out of nowhere and dominate Summoner's Rift once again. For now though, we'll have her in the S tier. Rel's debut is this patch, and we'll hold off on rating her until next patch. Keep your eyes peeled though. Other things to note are that Brand is significantly weaker in high elo, as he's actually a D tier pick up there. Other supports provide an incredible amount of value, and even enchanters can match his damage these days because of Imperial Mandate. At the same time, they also provide more utility than him, and thus elite players don't really prioritize Brand nearly as much as low elo ones. With Annie nerfed, we've also had to place her in the C tier as she's been falling off a bit as a support as well. Our OP picks for supports are Leona, Maokai, and Thresh, followed up by Lulu, Bard, Morgana, Nami, Janna, Alistar, and Nautilus in the S tier. Maokai is proving to be an impressive pick with Imperial Mandate. His crowd control is reliable and his damage incredibly threatening. Nothing is scarier than randomly getting popped by some giant saplings, and even having the power to take brush control at worst is still very valuable. Of course, Leona and Thresh are exceptional picks with their incredible lockdown and playmaking potential as well. Expect some potential changes though. There's bound to be some changes with the buffs to support items and their lower price points.
Well, that'll wrap up our video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to answer our question of the day down in the comments below. In an earlier video, we asked, which class do you think needs more champions? And Hennick H replied, AP Bruisers. When your team picks AD mid and jungle, you want to pick some AP, so your options are tanks or Mordekaiser. Once again, check out our website at ProGuides.com if you're looking to improve at League of Legends. We have a ton of resources for you over there, and you can always subscribe to this channel as well. Until next time, as always, best of luck on the Rift, stay hydrated, and wash your hands.
And here we...